In this unit, we are going to focus on creating a new snippet from authored content. We will take a look at how to create the snippet, what you are doing when you are making selections during that process, and then what happens as a result of those actions from both an end user's perspective and also from a content reuse and content management perspective. So here we have on screen some content, and it's styled content, there's text, it's very simple. There are some variables here. In this particular case, this is a company executive summary, which has some variables that are going to reflect a specific client name that we would maybe use this in an RFP response or some sort of proposal. And so we want to be able to use this wherever it's relevant, but we want to make sure that it's clear. We're going to eventually add values that will represent a specific client name. So we don't want to have to find and replace or copy and paste an old client's name into a new document. So we want to be careful about things like that. And as you've learned already, when you've looked at variables units, those are really important and very beneficial to have as part of your snippet content. So we're going to go ahead and create a snippet. So I'm going to select all of the content that I want to be part of this executive summary snippet. I'm not going to include the heading in this case. And I'm going to select New Snippet. Now, SmartDocs has two options for creating a new snippet. One, from a selection of already authored content, which is what we are doing. And it knows that because I selected content initially before I chose to initiate the new snippet action. The other option is to create a snippet from a template that has been predefined. So you can find information about that in future units. So right now we are choosing to create a new snippet from a selection. The first thing you do is decide in which repository you want to store your snippet. Now, in most cases, many of you may have only one repository to begin with, which is totally fine. In this case, I have 3 that I'm connected to. So the first thing I'll do is decide where do I want to store this. Before I switch into different repositories, what I want to do is take your attention down here for a moment. One thing that all snippets will have is a unique snippet name, which you will enter however you like. All of this information underneath this line is considered metadata. Metadata, by definition, is categorical attribute information that is assigned to your content. It will allow it to be searchable. So you can search by anything that is metadata, including the words that are in the snippet name. It also will allow you to structure and organize the content in your snippet library, which resides in your SmartDocs repository. So as you create new snippets, you will be presented with whatever metadata options and fields that your content manager has created for you. If you are the content manager, then you're probably very familiar about what the choices are. If you're not, and you're now creating new snippets as part of a team, then you might be presented with information that you haven't yet seen before. So all of your categorical information is going to be relevant to your specific content's purpose, subject matter, and usage. In other units, you will be able to find information about setting up metadata, creating metadata, and puzzling through that. We aren't going to do that here. We're just going to be the end user creating a snippet and work with the metadata fields that have been created for us. So with each repository, you can create a different set of metadata, which is one of the reasons why some people will have different repositories, because they do want to have snippets that are organized differently, have different categorical information, because they're just simply different types of content. So you can have as many fields. You may find in your environment that you have many fields. You may find a very simple structure like I have here. In this particular case, this sales proposals repository has 2 drop-down lists. In this case, they are dependent, so you can see that subcategory label is still gray. So until I choose a category option, I don't have a subcategory list presented to me. So now that I've chosen one, I have a specific subcategory list. If I were to choose a different category option, I'm presented with a different subcategory list. So this is set up as a dependency. And again, this was set up by whomever created our snippet library. If I go to a different repository, you'll see this one has different metadata. So each repository will have different metadata, and most fields, if the fields are required, you will not be able to create the snippet without completing them, which SmartDocs will let you know if you've left out a field. So basically, all you need to know from this is as you go to create a snippet, you will very likely be required to fill in the fields that you are seeing. So we're going to go ahead and give this a snippet name. And we will choose as the topic, we'll go ahead and choose About Us. So this will be an executive summary about our demo company, Intech Corporation. Language code in this case is English. This is our source language, so we'll leave that. And right now I don't need any keywords. The reason that this is in here is sometimes you might find a keyword field that is, and if you do, you should have a process in your team about how to use that. What you do not need to do is include any words that you've already used and that you see here on screen as part of your metadata. The only thing that you would put here is something that you feel people may search by that doesn't appear in the metadata or even in the body content. So it could be just associated with something else. Typically, we advise you likely don't need a keywords field, but I wanted to have that in here just to explain that, yes, you can have that. It's an open text field. It's not always necessary, and you can do a full text search of the body content of your snippets. So very likely, unless you have a really specific use case, you probably wouldn't need this. But people ask about that all the time. So I wanted to make sure we included that in here. But very likely, you wouldn't need it. And if you leave it blank, it's fine, because I would never make that a required field in practice. And it's not in this case either. So I'm going to go ahead and say create. So now SmartDocs is extracting a copy of this content, saving it into our repository of information, so in our snippet library. And now what's really wonderful about SmartDocs, as you've probably already learned, is that it is very immediate. So as soon as this snippet is created, it's actually available for anyone on your team who has access to your repository to use this snippet, to search for and find this snippet. So if someone's working on something right now and they happen to search for something and this pops up, they can now use it safely. So the snippet was successfully created and uploaded. We say OK. Let's take a look at the result of having done that. Now it has some visual attributes. So we see a tab at the top with the name of the snippet and an outline that shows you every single thing that's included in this particular snippet. Because my cursor is inside of it and I have my task pane open, I'm also seeing some property information here. So I can see in which repository we stored our snippet in the corporate repository. Of course, this is version 1.0 because we just created it. And that is the latest version, again, because we just created it. We can see the name of the snippet here. Anytime you want, if you hover over the icon, you'll see some basic property information, including the metadata that was chosen in the custom metadata and its SmartDocs ID. You also have in your task pane properties that you can select, and you'll always have a drop-down menu. So let's just go quickly through some of these. A lot of these will be covered in future units. If I selected convert, this would actually convert it back to plain text. So it would remove the snippet tagging in my document. It would still be a snippet because I've already saved it to the repository. So that's already there. But I could, in the context of this document, remove the snippet tagging, which would break its connection with the snippet itself in the repository. There are some of you that have need for that. And if you do, again, you'll learn more about that in future units. If I decide I don't want it in my document, I can just remove it. Again, this doesn't remove it from the repository. It's only removing it from the document. Branching allows me to create another version of this snippet. So if I had made an update to this snippet and wanted to not save over changes, but rather create another version, but create a parent-child relationship between them, I would choose this branching option. Again, this is just a preliminary explanation of what that is. Future units will cover that further. Or I can check it out. If I want to check it out to edit, that will alert anyone else who might search for this search and find this snippet that is currently being checked out for edit. And as part of your process, that might mean to them, hold off on using it or check in with the person who has checked the snippet out to find out what edits are being made, maybe when they'll be complete, etc. But that's how you check it out of the repository, to lock it down from anyone else editing it, and also to let others know that you are currently editing that snippet. So those are some content actions that you have once something is a snippet and you have selected that. In the properties, you have three tabs here. One is the snippet metadata, which is a lot of other things beyond what you just chose when you were creating the new snippet. So you have some general stuff, that this is the name of the snippet, some other information that SmartDocs assigns to your content, including a SmartDocs ID, where it is located in your repository, etc. You'll see a custom section. These are the custom metadata fields that you as an end user and creator of a snippet would select. So you'll see those listed here. And then you'll see the history, which this one doesn't have much history because we just created it, but we can see the create user, the modify user, and the creation date and modified date, which currently are the same, again, because we just created it. So this keeps a history of those things, which can be very helpful later on when you're trying to figure out when content has been modified, if there are snippets that are outdated or haven't been reviewed in a very long time. So a lot of this information is very helpful. So SmartDocs is providing you with a lot of data and ways to find and use your snippets in a variety of ways. If you wanted to, you could generate a report. This would open this data as an Excel file if you needed that for something. If you wanted to go directly to your repository in SharePoint, you could enter that from here. And if you want to edit the metadata, you can do that here. Now, this is something that some of you might find you need to do. Let's say you chose your metadata as you were creating your snippet, and you realize, oh, I made a mistake. So you can go into your edit to view, and here you're going to see this is very similar to what we just saw when we were creating it, although we can't change the repository because we've already chosen that, or the SmartDocs ID because that's assigned by SmartDocs, but it's showing you what that content is, what those properties are. But you could change anything else you might need to. So if you decide, oh wait, this shouldn't have been about us, this actually should have been history instead. So you could change it and save it, and it would update that. So now it's saving the metadata. What it's also doing, which we haven't discussed yet, is it is ensuring that the snippet is properly cataloged in your library, meaning it has now either created that history folder to represent that piece of metadata and put the snippet into it, or it has put it into our existing history folder. So let's take a look at what that means. I'm going to close this for a moment. And if I go to our Browse view and our corporate repository, we can see we have this About Us folder and the history folder. So right now, of that list of drop-down metadata that we saw, these are the only two so far that snippets have been assigned to, meaning that when snippets were created, so far, these are the only two that have been selected from that list. SmartDocs creates these folders for you in your snippet library, and it puts the snippets in the proper folder. So initially, we had chosen About Us, but it's no longer in here because it's now here in our history folder. So it created the folder, recognized the change, moved it out of the About Us, created the new history folder, and put it in there. So this is a direct reflection of your snippet library in your repository in SharePoint, just to help connect the dots a little bit. So when you create a new snippet, again, immediately available, you can see it's right here. So anyone who has access to your repository can get it and insert it. And also your metadata that you're choosing is really important because it's going to help organize your content. If I search by any of these, any of this metadata, these snippets will show up as well.